Hey everybody, welcome back. It is the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beaton, joined by the Fantasy Master, Lothario himself, Gray Albright. How's it going over there, Gray?
Good, man. I got a confession to make.
Yeah, let's hear it.
This weekend, I bought a Merce.
I think the only thing that's surprising to me is that you didn't already have one, if I'm just being completely honest. Do you need to discuss this further? Like, what are we talking, like cross body? Or are we talking full like shoulder hanging bag?
So, two things on that. My dad used to have the Merce that you carry around, like the hand Merce, and he also used to have a fur coat. I'm not that far. So here's the deal, though, because like I got to wear my vest until June 23rd, and at that point I was like, you know what, it's like 95 degrees out. I can't wear a jacket anymore. But I also can't carry around my keys and my wallet in my pockets. So I had to break down and buy a Merce. It's really embarrassing.
Can I ask why you can't just carry your keys and wallet in your pocket like the rest of us?
My coffee place, and I had to walk in immediately. I was like, I got a Merce, just so don't make fun of me. I had to get out in front of it, man. It's really embarrassing.
Anyway. Do you think that makes it better? I feel like that just makes it worse. If you walk in and you announce it, like then it feels like a call for attention. Like, I bought this. I want you to notice me and notice my new accessory because I'm deciding that this is how I am now. I'm going to carry a bag instead of just putting shit in my pockets like a normal human being.
Oh man, it's so embarrassing. It's just cut the first 5 minutes of this, please.
just put it in your pockets, Gray. It's fine. You got room, I promise. If not, get smaller stuff. Minimalize a little bit. You don't need to carry 85 cards with you, I promise. Like 3 or 4 max.
It's not my fault that every single boba place gives a stamp card.
I think you need 2 wallets. Then you need like a one wallet and then like a boba card wallet. Like something that you would put like business cards in. Except for you, it's obviously boba cards.
I'm actually okay. So what I don't have in my wallet is any fertility drugs. Huh? I'm segueing. That's what I'm doing here.
Yeah, that was smooth, Gray. I don't think anybody.
I do have like 3 condoms from high school though. So there's that. Yeah.
All right, let's just move on from that conversation here. So you mentioned Orelvis Martinez is suspended for 80 games. He was called up by the Blue Jays and then got benched his first day, by the way, and then got suspended by violating the league substance rules and tested positive for a fertility drug, which is, by the way, usually what they use on the backside of some kind of, performance enhancing drugs. So there you go. Orelvis Martinez suspended 80 games. You can drop him in any kind of redraft format.
This is pretty good, though. I gotta say, like, I appreciate that they've gotten to the point where the suspensions, like, I was a defender of the suspensions when it was Nove Marte. I was like, things happen. People get prescribed medicine. They don't know exactly what it is. So, it's understandable. It's a different country. Their doctors may not be familiar with all the banned substances. But when you have a guy get suspended and he's 22 years old and he's like, I'm just trying to get my girl pregnant. Like, come on, man. You're 22. I mean, it's like, I could, if it was like Jose Abreu saying that, I'd be like, come on, man, cut the guy a break. he's trying to have a kid and he's older and, I mean, that's understandable, but I mean, at 22, come on, man, come up with a better excuse. That's terrible. That's making like honestly, Martinez's excuse about it being a fertility drug at 22 makes us, the people like me who are defending the people getting suspended, bad. That makes me look bad. Don't make me look bad.
Oh, yeah, just hurting everybody. It only takes one, Gray, and then everybody thinks there's a big, everything's going on, and now it's just ruined. Like, all credibility is ruined.
I kind of wish this would have happened on Monday, just so people would have bid on him with Fab. That would have been sweet if people got Fab, if they would have fabbed him and then he would have got suspended. Oh well, can't have everything, obviously. In November I drafted a Draft Champions League team. I'm not going to be a champion in that league. Don't get, that's a type of league. 50 round draft and hold. Anyway, I drafted Orelvis Martinez. I drafted him back in November of last year, and in the same league, I drafted him to back up Bo Bichette on my team in case Bo Bichette got injured. So, like, when Martinez came up, I was like, oh, excellent. Like, I had no one in that slot. I lost Bichette, and I was like so excited to have Martinez. And then he got called up in like midweek last week, so I wasn't able to put him because it's a bi-weekly lineup lock. So I had to wait until Friday to put Martinez in. So I got like the one game from Martinez, and then he got suspended. And now I'm back to having Bo Bichette as my starting shortstop. The team's not doing very well, as you can imagine. Anyway,
yeah, I mean, Bo's not been
a little bit of a shaggy dog story about my own team. But yeah, I actually, who's kind of interesting is the other guy, Horowitz. First time someone who has the same name as my accountant is interesting for fantasy baseball.
Yeah, I mean, he's come up and he's hit really well. He's been up 13 games. He's hitting 366. He got a 480 on base with a couple of home runs. I mean, he's really been performing. They moved him up in the lineup really quickly. I mean, he might stick into some playing time here. The Blue Jays desperately need some kind of boost here, Gray.
Yeah. It's kind of funny that like every team, like you hear like, oh, this team is like desperate for a boost. Like they need something to spark them. And then you look at like the standings and it's like they're one game out of the wild card. It's like every team basically now makes the playoffs. It's like, oh man, the Mets, what a mess that team is. And then it's like, yeah, but they're like a half game out of the wild card. Anyway, with Horowitz, yeah, I think he probably is like, he's one of those guys that looks more interesting in the big picture versus like the micro, because like he is a hit tool guy first. So if he comes up and, well, he is up, but if he hits like 290, I wouldn't be shocked at all. Like he's that type of hitter, maybe even like 300, 310 potentially. He has that ability. unfortunately, he doesn't really have any real power or speed. So he's kind of like, he's like basically a 12 homer, 12 steal, 290 hitter, which is good for deeper leagues and also for, the big picture. Like, he could end up looking decent on the player radar at the end of the year if he stays up and he hits at the top of the order, because he's going to get runs. He's going to hit for a good average. But because there's no real speed and power, unfortunately, like for shallower leagues, like a 10-team or even a 12-team league, like you can try him. And while he's hitting well, I mean, you might get a little something out of him. But I could see you getting a little bit bored of him as well in a shallower league, because he's not going to really put up like any flashy numbers for like if a guy goes 3 for 4 with 1 run or 2 runs and doesn't have a homer or a steal, that's fine. One day, it's fine. A couple days a week, it's okay. It's good. But it really, in the shallower leagues, when you see other guys like hitting for power or stealing bases on waivers, it's hard to hold on to guys like that. But I like him though. I mean, any guy who can hit well for average is, there's a place for that usually. It's not always someone that, people grab though. It kind of reminds me of like Stephen Kwan is an extreme example, and he actually has a little bit more speed than Horowitz, but or like Luis Reyes is also an extreme example. And Urias is like, he's coming off of what, like a 350 season, hitting 350, and he looks like a lock for 330 at worst. And he still was drafted at like 120, 130 overall in shallower leagues. And I kind of understand it, because like a guy with a high batting average at first is like, it's really hard to get totally excited about a guy like that. But I could see grabbing him. I mean, why not?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those guys who gets drafted because you needed that piece in the draft. Like, you went kind of, low batting average with the home run, stolen base potential, and you're just trying to level things out or just trying to get some counting stats. But that is the problem with like Reyes or anybody like that. If they're not getting the counting stats, it starts to become really boring. And even with counting stats, it's pretty boring. You just have to kind of trust that you're getting the value that you need. And if you've had a season like I have and your team's full of injuries, something consistent that's not bad is not the worst thing you can do for your lineup as we're getting through all the injuries through the All-Star break. We always see a bunch of guys thrown on the injury list right before the All-Star break too, just to get them some extra time. So I wouldn't be surprised if everybody's filling, some gaps here or there, and, using a Spencer Horwitz or somebody like that. I mean, he could be Bo Bichette.
Bo Bichette. I'm so out on Bo Bichette now. You can't even hurt me anymore with the Bo Bichette slander. I'm with you now.
You're with me? Bo Bichette. All right, welcome.
I call him piece of shit. That's what I say about Bo Bichette now. I do not like him anymore. We are done.
All right, great. Let's go ahead and move on. Heston Kjerstad got called up, and that's a positive. He is getting the start actually today over Colton Cowser. 56 games in AAA. He had a 258 plate appearances. He has 60 home runs, 2 stolen bases. He's hitting 300, 397, 601. He had a 26% K rate and a 12.4% walk rate. He's had different ranges of Ks, somewhere between like mid-teens to mid-20s. So it's never really gotten out of control in any kind of big samples. He has some power. The hit tool is actually there for him, despite some of the K numbers. What are you thinking here with Heston?
He's kind of like the opposite. He's like the exact opposite of Spencer Horowitz, like the the guy who could potentially have a Kjerstad. That is, he could have a 31 to 34% strikeout rate and hit maybe 185 potentially. But he's also really exciting. On the other hand, he's super fun, like it's the kind of guy who's like, if he comes up and hits 5 homers this week, I could see him going in fab, like out of $1,000 in fab, he's going to go for like $150+. Like, it's like he's that type of guy. Like, he could potentially come up and just be like, immediately. And basically, what you got from Kowser in April, May, he could be in June's now almost over, but he could be July, August. He could do that. Like, he could potentially have a maybe 30 game, 60 game run of being really good. At some point, he is going to get exploited, though. And, he could potentially be exploited immediately. Like, there's a chance he could go 0 for 12, in like 3 games this week and just get sent right back down. That's totally a possibility. He's like an all or nothing guy. I would grab him just for the potential upside, because in like, maybe a month, 2 months of time, he could hit 15 homers. Like, he has crazy power. I just wouldn't, I wouldn't drop anyone too valuable, because like I said, he could also hit 180.
Yeah, the average could potentially bottom out, but if he can just control it a little bit, like you said, the power's there to make a difference. If he can just stay and keep the strikeout rate there under control. And we mentioned Colton Kowser. He's been awful since May. He's hitting 182 since the start of May. He has 3 home runs and 2 stolen bases over that time. He's been horrendous, Gray.
Yes, he has. Unfortunately, I only have him in one league. It is also the same league where I have the Bo Bichette as my starting shortstop. It hasn't been a great time in that league. That's the problem with doing those draft and holds in November. It's like you don't really know playing time. You're not sure of spring training injuries. You have no idea about. It's like, I don't know. Anyway, I'm not gonna make excuses for my terrible team. But yeah, Colton Kowser is basically droppable in most 15 team mixed leagues and shallower, which is that's the majority of mixed leagues. So yeah, he's pretty droppable.
Yeah, and it started so well, Gray. I mean, in April, he hit 303 with 6 home runs and 3 stolen bases, and we're like, okay, we got the beginnings of a potential stud here. And then it's been all bad since there. So hopefully he can take a little time off here and maybe just get it together again. That'd be great. Speaking as a Kowser owner in a couple places.
Yeah. No, completely. I worry that he got exploited. He's basically what I was saying with like Kjerstad. It's like sometimes these guys come up and the league isn't sure what to do with them yet, or the league isn't sure how to get them out yet. And then once they get exploited, it's up to them to then readjust back to the league. And if you can't readjust, then what happens, is what's going on with Kowser right now is what's going on there. But he could readjust back. I mean, that's the great thing about, baseball and MLB. These guys are, they're in the MLB for a reason. If they can adjust back, then they're good again. It's like, you see this all the time. Like, it takes longer for some people to adjust back though. Like, I mentioned Stephen Kwan earlier. He wasn't great last year. He was great his rookie year. And then last year was a little bit of a rough go. And now this year he's great again. So it's like, it could have been an adjustment period going on like in his sophomore year. Anyway, but yeah, it's up to Kowser now to readjust.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, like, The numbers don't look that bad. I mean, he was always striking out a lot. That's not like it's not like all of a sudden he just went from not striking out to striking out. I get, it just when you have high strikeout tendencies, bad periods are going to come. I think Kowser could still figure it out, but yeah, I mean, right now he's lost. So for the time being, not worth rostering or definitely not worth starting. I mean, if you have really deep benches or steep league, sure, hold on, but it's been real bad for like 2 months now. Angel Martinez called up by the Guardians in AAA this year. He had 17 games. He had 74 plate appearances, 3 home runs, 2 stolen bases. He hit 333, 438, 550. Solid walk and strikeout rates. Honorable mention for Itch among the Cleveland prospects. Where are you at on this call up, Gray? Where would you put him versus Heston as a priority?
I would put Heston above him. I don't really. I think Angel Martinez at this point, he's just a platoon guy, potentially, out against righties. So he's on the weak side of a platoon. So I don't know. It depends. Like, we're recording this on Monday afternoon. David Fry supposedly has an elbow injury. So, if Angel Martinez can get into the lineup on a regular basis, then he's a little bit more interesting. He's basically he's sort of like what I was saying with Spencer Horowitz. He's, a little bit of speed, a little bit of power, should hit for a decent average. That's always average is always a very fickle category to chase because, a little bit of bad luck on BABIP and he's not hitting for a good average. But it looks like in a vacuum, it looks like he's a little bit of speed, a little bit of power, and a little bit of average. But he also doesn't look like he has the at-bats for most mixed leagues. So, yeah, I'm lukewarm at best on Martinez. Angel Martinez, it is.
Yeah, I think this one's kind of speculative. It feels like we'll wait and see how serious David Fry's injury is. And then, if he's hurt, then that opens up playing time for Martinez. But without that, I don't really know where he slots in unless, they want to really adjust the lineup or not the lineup, but the positions and basically move everybody around. That doesn't seem like something that they would do for one prospect and get everybody else uncomfortable. So let's go ahead and move on to Ben Rice. We talked about his call up potentially last show as something that might happen with the Rizzo injury, but ultimately I think we both decided, I'm not sure if he gets called up, and even if he does, he may not play. Well, he got called up, Gray. He was number 8 among the Itch's Yankee prospects. Was looking like a catcher at the time. He still could play catcher, I guess, at some point, but looking kind of more corner infield DH. Double-A this year in 49 games. He had 12 home runs, 8 stolen bases, and hit 261, 382, 511. In AAA, he only had 11 games, 3 home runs, 1 stolen bases. He had 333, 440, 619. High walk rates, solid K rates along the way. But they also just acquired, or I guess not acquired because he was a free agent, but brought in J.D. Davis. What do you think about Ben Rice and his potential playing time here, Greg?
Ben Rice he was really interesting to me for Fab this week. I was surprised that Fab seemed kind of flat for him overall. Like, I was able to get him in, I think, 2 leagues, and in 1 league, I would have got him if I wasn't, a little bit lower on Fab than other people. I just had less Fab to spend, so I wasn't able to spend the money on Ben Rice. But he looks really good to me. I imagine, one person, I believe it was Oaktown Steve, frequent commenter on Razzball. He said that, he pulled back his bids on Ben Rice because the Yankees went out and got J.D. Davis. So, I guess that's a possibility for him, losing some playing time there, maybe on the weak side of the platoon. but he has catcher eligibility. So like, especially like I'm talking 2-catcher leagues, by the way, like in 2-catcher leagues, Ben Rice, even if he gets 5 days a week, that's as much as any catcher really, other than like, maybe William Contreras or something. Like most catchers only get 5 days a week. So I feel like Ben Rice was, for me, was an easy, bid on guy this week. He looks like, he's got solid contact. Like in his really short time in the majors, he's got the same walk rate as strikeout rate as of right now, 14.3%. And it's like, he doesn't have any speed, but whatever. I mean, that's most cornermen, most catchers. He has a little bit of power, but again, he has catcher eligibility. So it's like, even if he hits 12 to 15 homers and 255 the rest of the way, that, for a second catcher, that's a easy. Like I was between him and Yasmani Grandal. It's like there's no contest there. Like Yasmani Grandal's awful. And so I had no problem bidding pretty aggressively on him in just about all my leagues. I wish I actually feel like, there's one league where I have Tyler Stevenson, and I was really contemplating going Ben Rice over Tyler Stevenson, also a 2-catcher league. So, that's sort of where I am with Ben Rice. Like he's basically, if he's a catcher eligible guy in, say a 2-catcher league, he's at least a top 20 catcher, I would think. In the Yankees lineup, if he's going for like, even the next 2 months, and he's a lefty, so that means he's only coming out against lefties. It's not like they're going to platoon him out against righties. Like as a lefty bat, that means he's getting the strong side of the platoon, no matter what's going on in with the Yankees lineup. And his first week with the team, it showed, like they even played him against lefties. And I watched a few at bats. He looked totally fine. I mean, he didn't look bad. He was like, he stayed in against a couple tough lefties, and it looked like he was holding his own. I mean, you can look at his stats for the first week. He hit 294 and didn't strike out much. So, yeah, I'm all in on Ben Rice, man. I don't know. I might be crazy, but I'm in on him. I like it. I like the. I mean, as a catcher. Now, don't get me wrong. If it's like you're looking at Ben Rice and you're like, okay, well, I have an opening at corner infield, then it kind of depends on the league. Then you're looking at a different scenario. Then you're like, okay, is it Yandy Diaz or Ben Rice? I'm going Yandy Diaz. Like if you're looking at a corner infield spot, it's probably like you have to be pretty much hurting at corner infield. Like you're looking at like maybe, if you have say Nolan Chanel or Ben Rice, then I could see like, yeah, I would try Ben Rice there because Chanel looks awful. I mean, I went to the Dodgers game this past Friday, and oh my God, Ohtani hit a ball 450 feet. It looked like he barely even was, trying to swing. It was so easy off of his bat. Anyway, I was at the game with the Angels Dodgers, and Nolan Chanel was like a good 5 seconds behind fastballs. It was like the ball was already going. It was in the mitt and already about to get thrown back to the pitcher by the time Chanel would swing. He was like, his swing is so slow. There's no, like, he does not look like a major leaguer. I was, coming into the year, I really liked Nolan Chanel, but after watching him, man, he looks terrible. He really, it was the game that went into extra innings, and in the 10th inning, he bunted as like he was the first guy up, and he bunted, which that's more on Ron Washington. Like he's telling, he's calling that play, but still he's calling it because Nolan Chanel stinks. I mean, it's like he wouldn't be asking Mike Trout to bunt. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like
I don't know.
Like
I don't know.
That's fair. Okay, fair enough. Maybe that's all Ron Washington. But I'm saying like that line, the Angels lineup, by the way, it's like Rengifo and then a lot of garbage. It's like, oh, wow, is that bad? It's not a good team. Anyway, Ben Rice probably around maybe a 30th corner man. So around like Nolan Chanel area, if you're like struggling really bad and you have like, like Josh Bell, Reese Hoskins, Andrew Vaughn, Ben Rice, like that's kind of the area of Ben Rice with corner infielders. But with a catcher, yeah, man, I'm all in on Ben Rice as a catcher.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think the guys you named, the right area for corner infielders, and yeah, if you can get him a catcher, I don't know if he qualifies there in every league, but I think in most leagues he's going to, because that's what his position eligibility was coming into the season. So he should in most leagues qualify as a catcher. So yeah, absolutely give him that try. Fun with numbers. Nolan Schnell's hitting like 324 over the last 10 days, but that's awful. Just very random.
Just a bunch of like opposite field singles. That's what Nolan Chanel does. He slaps the ball the other way, barely over the shortstop's head. Oh man, he looks terrible.
I mean, the entire Angels team looks bad.
Oh,
so
they are bad, man.
It's really hard to blame anybody.
Woo! That game. Max Muncy's out, obviously. Mookie Betts is out, obviously. Will Smith didn't start, and the Dodgers lineup still looked better than the Angels lineup with just Ohtani and Freeman. It's like they're so bad. And Teoscar, obviously. But yeah, I mean, the Angels are bad, man. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, remember Joe Adell victory lap season? That was fun.
Oh, my God. He looks – so, yeah, Joe Adell is like – I think he's hitting like 190. Joe Adell –
I think it's worse. I don't think it's 190.
Joe Adell – so I'm sorry to say it because I was a believer for sure in him actually just needing playing time and figuring out. But he really does – he looks like he should be like in the KBO or something. Like he does not look like a major leaguer, unfortunately. It's sad for me to say, but Joe Adell is not a major leaguer.
No, it doesn't look good right now, Gray. I mean, again, he's still only 25. Maybe he can figure something out. I mean, on that team, there's really no reason that they shouldn't just let him keep playing. And I mean, they've buried him for long enough. He doesn't have any options because they've played with his time since he was 18. So I mean, he has no chance to go anywhere but keep playing. So we're gonna see if he can figure it out, Gray. But yeah, right now he doesn't belong starting for your fantasy teams in any league. Let's go ahead and move on to Adam Kloffenstein. He was promoted. He pitched 1 inning in relief and then sent back down. This year in AAA, though, he's had 14 starts, 77 innings, 68 Ks, 3.97 ERA, 1.13 WHIP, 22% K rate, 9.5% walk rate. Steven Matz did have a setback during his rehab, and Andre Payante has been not good. So Adam Kloffenstein could get another look here. Is this somebody that you would look at stashing even in deep leagues, or is this just kind of a, they needed somebody in relief kind of thing?
Adam Kloffenstein is a partner at the Spencer Horowitz law firm. We're doing it's all Jew Day. It's all Jew Day today. We're reaching out. Yeah, I mean, I think he's NL only a play at this point unless he gets called up. I don't know. I mean, he looks fine. The Cardinals are like, it's funny that we're going back to what we were saying earlier. The Cardinals somehow are in the playoff chase. They're not a good team either. I mean, the fact that they're like, I think they're actually in the wild card. Like right now, if the season stopped tomorrow, I think they would be like the second best team for the wild card, which is like, it's so like there's so many bad teams. But yeah, Kleffenstein to me looks like an NL only play at this point. Maybe if he gets called back, then there might be something for like a streamer in mixed leagues, but outside of streaming, I just don't see it. I mean, he doesn't have great command, which, you know, for a rookie without good command, and he doesn't really have the strikeout numbers you want to see in the minors. So yeah, I'm not really that interested.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot there. Let's go ahead and move on to Royce Lewis. And I know that we were all crazy, all of us Royce Lewis lovers, where we had him in the preseason, his injury history, yada, yada, yada. But go watch him play baseball, Gray, and like, I mean, tell me I'm that crazy, because if he gets half a season, he still might be better than, you know, 2/3 of the league. He's so good. He has 18 games this year, Gray. He has 10 home runs. He's hitting 348, 413, 848, 16% K rate, 11% walk rate. Like, Royce Lewis is so good. Can we just, I don't know, hyperbolic time chamber him in between games or something? I don't know what we need to do, but just something.
Royce Lewis is like the Biggie or Tupac of baseball. It's like your Biggie's like 2 albums. He did a really good 2 albums, but if he would have lived for another 20 years, I mean, he might be in trouble with like how P. Diddy's in trouble. You know, I mean, it's hard to say. It's like it's a really small sample size with Royce Lewis, right? I mean, he looks good though. I mean, no doubt. It's like he's like you know, Mr. Prorater looks at Royce Lewis and it's like, boing. I like that. He's like at 80. He's basically he's basically played in half a season in his career. He's at 88 games as of right now, so a little bit over half a season. So if you were to prorate him out, he looks like he's basically Babe Ruth meets Ted Williams. like he's perfect. Royce Lewis is perfect in the real micro. don't talk about the games played thing. You know, I was looking at, speaking of like Biggie, I don't know, but speaking of Royce Lewis and how it's like he's basically, you know, with like Biggie and only 2 albums. Like if you look at like, let's look at Byron Buxton. He unfortunately went on to be healthy this year. He's actually, Byron Buxton has managed to stay healthy, and we see where that gets him. You know, like I know it's like he's older now, and you know he's not quite the same player as he was when he was injured all those years. But you know, Byron Buxton just looks terrible as a healthy player. He's like I would have preferred the Byron Buxton of, you know, the prorated 2 months of healthy Byron Buxton. Give me
for 2 months.
Yeah, give me Byron Buxton like crazy health, like injury prone but healthy for 2 months, and versus this like Byron Buxton who's like playing every day and looks terrible. I mean, he just looks like, I don't know if he's like trying to save his legs or trying to save his body from like injuries. So he's like holding back a little bit, but or he just got old. I don't know. I mean, that happens too. So yeah, I don't know. But Byron Buxton looks terrible. So Royce Lewis, in theory, looks great in the small sample size that we're seeing, but you know, if we were to get Royce Lewis for 140 plus games, would it be as good? I don't know. I mean, possibly. I mean, I guess it's possible. I don't know if we're ever going to see it anyway, so it's kind of a moot point. But yeah, he looks incredible though. I mean, Royce Lewis honestly looks like the best hitter in baseball, pound for pound. If you were to just look at like, his less than 20 games played. If you just look at his like very small sample size, you're like, wow, like he looks so good. Like he is so on every pitch, and he drives the ball so far for a guy who doesn't look, incredible. Like it's like Aaron Judge or Giancarlo. You can understand them driving the ball really far, but Royce Lewis hits the ball a ton, and he does not look like he has that kind of power. So it's just the ball just jumps off of his bat. Like he looks great. Hopefully he stays that way and he stays healthy. That's all. I mean, there's nothing else to say really. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see his, his on pace 90 home run, 153 run, 126 RBI, 348, 413 season grade. That would be great to see. I mean,
yeah. I mean, the thing is too, like if you're, for 2025, at some point you could get that. So like, that's the allure, like I mean, I get it. I get why people were drafting Royce Lewis. I personally was not drafting him because because where he was going in drafts, it was just too early for the unknown of him staying healthy. So I was just out, but you can see the allure, and it'll be interesting to see where he goes next year, because he's definitely, I mean, if he's able to stay healthy, like if he shows up at camp in 2025 healthy and he's ready to go, it's hard to deny like a top 30, top 40 pick at least at this point. Like that's like assuming he stays like somewhat healthy the rest of the year, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely we got to see him play for at least a little bit.
But if he goes if he gets say he ends up let's be realistic and say he ends up with 27 homers, 7 steals, and a 270 average in 100 games. Say, it's hard. How do you not take that in the top 30, right?
Yeah, and I'd say those are. I mean, that's very reasonable for him. He could do that, I think.
He could do that by next week.
Yeah, he could do that. Like, dude, by the end of the month, it could be done, Gray. It could be done. He's just killing it. There's some people who weren't killing it and are starting to get it together. Let's talk about one of them in Wyatt Langford, just because he's returned. He returned at the end of May. Since then he's hit 296, 337, 481. He has 2 home runs, 6 stolen bases. He's number 11 on the 7-day player rater, number 51 on the 30-day player rater. So what are you thinking in regard to Wyatt Langford? Is this, what we were always kind of told we were getting, and it's just happening, or is he getting lucky and we should move him? What are your thoughts on Wyatt right now?
He could really get, like we saw in March in spring training, like he could get hot and he could fix his whole season. Like I wouldn't be shocked to see him have, a good second half, and like if he has a good second half and ends up with like 15 homers and 25 steals and hits 270. At the end of the day, you look at that and you're like, that's not really that bad, and those are pretty doable numbers. The steals, like he might have to turn on the steals a little bit. He does have the speed though. Like he could potentially have like a couple 5 steal weeks. It's possible. I mean, I still like him. I like Langford a lot. I was giving him, I think after his second homer, which was his first out of the park home run, I gave him some crap about like how it was like the first time he had hit a ball out of the park in 3 months, which is, it was a pretty bad slump, but he was also injured a little bit. But I was giving him crap, but I'm still a fan. I mean, he could easily become as valuable as a top 100 overall player for the season, not only just for like, the second half. Like he could, I don't know where he is now on the player rater is probably, where is he? Let's see. So he is at 309 right now. So bad, absolutely terrible, considering he was drafted in like the top 70. So that's really not good. But he could move up 200 spots because, like I've said many times, when a guys have steals, like he's a 5 category guy potentially. So if he starts putting together a bunch of steals, there's like he could be as good as, say, Jarren Duran, for instance. Like he could be a top 100 guy for the rest of the season. So yeah, I like him.
Yeah, I mean, I like him as well. It's mostly speed, I think, is what you're hoping for, and hoping that the Rangers continue to let him run. They've let him run as of late, but that's really not what they've done. I mean, they were very low in the league last year in steals, and I believe that's carried over to this year. So I like him. I think that there's a lot more to come, but his primary talent that he's going to give you is steals, and Texas is a bottom 10 team in that. So yes and no. Like I like him. I'm trying to hold off on getting overexcited because that's generally what I do when I see a prospect start putting it together. So I'm just trying to hold myself back a little bit, Gray, and not get my own hopes up.
Yeah, that's fair. Because it's like we're at the halfway mark right now, and if he goes, like if he gets hot for power, which he could do as well, and say hits like 10 homers in the second half, or 12 homers, say, give him 15 homers. If he hits 15 homers on the year, but the steals are still low because the Rangers just don't run, and he goes and for the year he ends up at like 15 and hits 270. It's kind of it's a little bit boring.
Yeah, I mean it's fine. It's nice that you got some of that in a condensed period, but yeah, I mean it's at the end of the day, it's not necessarily, if they're going to hold his running back, then it's not necessarily as good as what we would hope from him. And what he could be if for our game. Obviously, the Rangers are playing a different game than we are here. Let's talk some other recent top performance here. Alec Burleson last week had 23 plate appearances. Gray. He had 3 home runs, 3 stolen bases. He had 429, 478, 857. Since the start of June, he's had 7 home runs, 3 stolen bases, and he's hitting 289. Is Alec Burleson becoming somebody that we need to start taking real account of for, or is this just a nice month in the middle of the season?
I think I mentioned him a couple weeks ago. I've liked Burleson for like a good month plus now. He, if you look at his contact, a 14.3% strikeout rate. Actually, that's the same as Ben Rice, now that I say it. Anyway, it's great contact. He's been playing, hitting at the top of the Cardinals lineup. Not a great lineup, but, I mean, he's been hitting at the top of it, or at least hitting second. He's great contact, hitting in a decent spot in a, kind of a poor lineup, but still a decent spot in that. Has power, a little bit of speed. I could see a sneaky valuable year from him. Think maybe 20 homers, 10 steals, 275 hitting second most days. That comes out to maybe 80, 75, 80 runs, 65, 70 RBIs. It's not bad. It's probably around top 120 on the player rater ish. I could see a sleeper post for him next year. He feels like a guy who's going to be slept on a little bit. I really am starting to like him more so than I thought I would. He was kind of he wasn't really on my radar coming into the year, but he looks good. I mean, he looks like, especially the contact. Like the contact for him has really not wavered at all since he's come up, like from the minors to the majors. Like he's made incredibly good contact the whole way. So the fact that he has like a 293 BABIP, that going with a 285 average, he does make a lot of contact that isn't always, like, it's not always necessarily great contact. He does hit, he does make some weaker contact. So it's like he is a little bit prone to like a lower BABIP than most people. Like I wouldn't say he's like necessarily a 290 BABIP. Like he might be closer to 275, 280 BABIP, but it's still, I mean, it's, that's splitting hairs basically. So he's like a 265, 270 hitter with some power, a little bit of speed, and hitting second. It's not awful.
No, it's not. And I mean, he's kind of predictable in that you really start him only versus righties if you can help it. That's where he primarily does his damage. And he's got some pretty strong home away splits as well. So you can kind of take advantage of that in daily leagues and play the matchups and know when to get him in and get him out and just maximize the production. If that's, that's where you're at in a daily league, is just trying to grind out as much production as you can from a day-to-day basis. So Burleson's a really good piece for that, or for building DFS lineups.
Yeah, agreed.
Can you tell me who the number one starting pitcher is on the 30-day player rater, Gray?
I'll say Paul Skenes.
That's not correct. I'll give you another guess because I think if you had asked me this question, I could have gone for like 6 years and not getting here. So I'll give you at least one more guess.
Man.
He has changed teams.
I'll say Jack Flaherty.
That is correct.
Really?
That is. Jack Flaherty has been the number one starting pitcher on the 30-day player rater. Over that time, he has 28 2/3 innings. Over 5 starts, he has 36 Ks in those 28 2/3. 1.26 ERA, an 0.8 WHIP, 34% K rate, and a sub 5% walk rate. Jack Flaherty is back, Gray. I mean, he has been just strolling through. Nobody mentioned him. Whoever grabbed him, just writing it out, enjoying the numbers, and they've been great.
Yeah, I mean, if I could toot my own horn, actually, if I tooted my own horn, I never leave my house. But if I can, for a second, metaphorically, toot my own horn, I will say that I wrote up Jack Flaherty probably about a month ago, and I said his peripherals look like a guy who is basically a top 10 starter at worst. I mean, he looks really good. Like if you look at just like I've said this many times before, but with starters, I usually just look at like their strikeouts and minus their walks. Like it's just, I mean, it sounds crazy to be like that basic, but it is really that basic. People complicate things by adding in all kinds of stuff where it's like, oh, wow, you see how well this guy is tunneling? It's like, yeah, but it doesn't matter, really. I mean, it's kind of cool to look at it and like GIFs. It's fun to look at like a guy's, a 15-second clip of a guy striking someone out, but it doesn't matter that much. But when you look at Jack Flaherty and you look at his strikeouts minus his walks, you're like, well, yeah, he's an ace. I mean, there's really nothing else to it. It's like you look at his, or if you want to, get fancy and say his Ks divided by walks. I mean, however you look at it, like he's striking out a ton of guys and he's walking no one. Like his numbers are really, they're beautiful. I mean, Jack Flaherty looks like maybe at worst now, like maybe a top 5 starter. He looks incredible.
I mean, he really does. It's I will just fess up and say that I have 0 shares because after last season, I mean, he looked so absolutely lost all season, had a change of teams and still looked lost. So I just assumed this was done with. But yeah, I mean, he looks great. I don't really have anything more to add to that other than asking you kind of among starting pitchers where you think where
It's
you think
actually
he's actually going to
interesting.
fall in for you.
Probably like for what, 2025 or for this
No,
year?
currently, like rest of season.
Rest of
Looking
season,
at
I would say a top 10. He's a top 10 starter in my
okay.
eyes. It's kind of interesting though with like the Tigers, because you can make the case that like Skubal and Flattery have been fixed or enhanced at least by the Tigers pitching staff or coaches. But like, is it like Mize is the issue, or do they not know how to maximize him? Maximize. That was unintentional, but I'll take it. Or like, Reese Olson also looks. His peripherals don't look as good, but I mean his ERA, he's been better than he should be at least.
Yeah.
Maeda is just cooked. That's that is what it is. Unfortunately, guys at a certain age, some of them just get cooked, and Kenta Maeda is cooked. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting if they can unlock Casey Mize, and there really is like, then you can really say like, hey, like this pitching staff is really like the coaches are really fixing these guys because I mean Flattery looked like a mess. He didn't look good. Like coming into this year, I don't think he was on anyone's I don't think he was in anyone's top 60 starters. Maybe 60 to 80 ish if you were aggressive, but I mean, he didn't look good. Let's be honest. He looked like he had real issues with his command, but he's really they have fixed his command, whatever it is. I don't know what it is. That's out of my, I don't care either. No, I do. I would, if someone were to tell me, I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. But that's, again, that goes into the nitty gritty where it's like, it doesn't really matter how he fixed it as long as he's fixed it. That's at the end of the day where results matter. And yeah, he's getting the results.
Yeah, I mean he is, and I think maybe the issue is Skubal and Flaherty both do some outside work and don't necessarily rely on the Tigers. So maybe just drag Casey Mize to some of those sessions, guys. Help a brother out.
Yeah.
But let's
ignore the pitching staff coaches. I'm surprised though. Where was Skenes? Was he top 10? He had to be top 10ish.
Yeah, right? I believe Skenes was 9.
Okay, I'm talking the 30-day pitching.
On the 30-day. Yeah. I mean, since you brought him up, let's talk about him real quick. Okay. I mean, 46 in a third inning, 8 starts, 2.14 ERA, 0.99 WHIP. He has 61 strikeouts in those 46 innings, 8 walks. That's a 33.7% K rate and a 4.4% walk rate. Gray, is there? I mean, if we were looking at Jack Flaherty as a top 10 rest of season, I mean, the same concerns you had before exist, but it's hard to ignore what Skenes has done so far.
Oh, completely, man. No, completely. Skenes to me is at least a top 10 starter as well. It depends, if you're looking at rest of the season, so you have to worry about how many innings is he going to throw? Honestly, I don't know how many innings he's going to throw. People are projecting him for around 70 more innings. If he does that, then that's basically 80 games. That's basically a half a season. So that's not really that's basically whatever everyone are you going to really project, say, Garrett Cole for much more than 70 innings? No, 70 innings feels like about what most guys will do. So yeah, I mean, he looks like a top 10 starter, Paul Skenes, that is. Again, if you just look at his strikeouts minus his walks, I mean, it's like it's hard to argue with his numbers. Next year for 2025, I'd love to be able to get some Paul Skenes action. I don't think I would be able to do it, but I would love to, because like that's when you really want to, like, when guys are like doing this well and they're only 22 years old. I has like hardly any innings on his arm, but he's still enough to throw 180 innings next year. I mean, yeah, he's going to be. It's hard to not see him as at least a top 3 starter for next year, assuming, knock on wood, assuming health and everything.
Yeah, I mean, I assume he's getting, the Spencer Strider treatment to some extent. Like, why wouldn't he, given the amount of strikeouts? And, in Strider's second season, he did go a little bit later, innings concerns and all of that. But like this year, he was one across the board. And then, obviously, we know what happened
next
there.
Year for us, for people, or for anyone listening who doesn't draft starters, high, next year will be our only chance to get Paul Skenes. Absolutely. Assuming he's healthy for his entire career, next year is going to be the year that we're going to be able to get Skenes, until like it's going to be like a Max Scherzer situation or a Justin Verlander or Kershaw. Like eventually we'll be able to get them again, like on the tail end of their career. Like, if there is a world in 2040, then yes, we will be able to get Paul Skenes again in like 15 years. But like next year will be our one chance to get Paul Skenes outside of like, taking him in the top 20. Like I could see him going at like between 20 and 30 overall. So if you really could get Paul Skenes next year, it's probably going to be your last chance before he's like a top 12, top 15 overall pick for a decade.
Yeah, and he might already get there depending on how many innings he throws up this year.
He could potentially, yes.
I mean, I'm just looking at the list. I got Rudy's rest of season pulled up. I'm looking at the list here, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, there's like 7, 8 guys, 10 max, that like even with innings restrictions, if you put that on him, that I would potentially take over him. And that list is really like 3 if we remove innings projections. Like it's a very tiny list of people without innings restrictions that I would rather have than him rest of season. So
yeah, no, totally. Yeah, no, I agree. It's like Skubal or Skenes, Burns or Skenes, Glasnow or Skenes, Wheeler or Skenes. But then you get into other guys where it's like you're not taking Pablo Lopez over Skenes, are you? I mean, he's been a mess. I understand he should be better, and I imagine Pablo Lopez will be better. But are you really going Pablo Lopez over Skenes? I'm not.
Are you going like a Logan Gilbert, who's been great, but
he's
like
been great? But are you going?
Doesn't have the upside?
No. Yeah, no, I'm not. I like Logan Gilbert, like you said.
I love Logan
Gilbert. Yeah, he's great. But Logan Gilbert for me is like a top 12 starter, and Skenes is like top 5. He's so good. Anyway, let's move on.
All right, we will move on from just man crushing there, Gray. We'll move into the bullpen. The Mets bullpen. Whew, it's been a time, Gray. It's been a fun time for them. Edwin Diaz goes on 10-day suspension after he's ejected from the game with an illegal substance on his glove and/or hand. It's been. Reed Garrett. Is there anybody else that you would look at? Anybody else here, Gray? Or I don't know that Edwin Diaz is getting his job back anyways. So Reed Garrett.
No, he will. Yeah, no, Edwin Diaz. I think Edwin Diaz will get the job back, but I would say Reed Garrett for the next 10 days, 10 games for as long as Edwin Diaz is suspended. But yeah, I think he gets it back.
Yeah, I mean, eventually, I think he will, but it's he's had some very bad appearances this year. He had started to clean it up a little bit, but now I'm not sure how much of that was him cleaning up and how much of him was using super tack. So we'll wait and see what happens with the ES coming on the back end. But yeah, definitely not letting him go. 10-day suspension, so you could have him back next week. David Bednar for the Pirates is going to the IL with a minor side issue. Doesn't seem like it's overly serious, but side issue is very vague, so I'm not sure how to handle that at the time, Gray. Who are you looking at for Pittsburgh?
I would say Aroldis Chapman, potentially, I guess, Holderman, but I wouldn't speculate too deep on the Pirates unless it's like NL only or you're really desperate. Otherwise, I would just go Aroldis and hope he gets, the next 2 weeks of saves.
Yeah, I'm with you. Toronto, Jordan Romano has been shut down from throwing after elbow soreness. Yimi Garcia is also on the AIL. Who are you looking at in Toronto? Does it continue to be the same couple guys?
Yeah, I would say Chad Green, or Pearson, I guess, potentially. But Chad Green, he's pitched really well this year. And the fact that Romano and Yimi both have elbow soreness, Chad Green could be like the, like a Kirby Yates type pickup where he gets the closer job now and has it for the rest of the year. Like it's potential there. Like I was pretty aggressive in trying to get Chad Green in most leagues because now that Romano's had a setback, which we knew was coming anyway, because guys, if pitchers get elbow soreness, they're not going to just like magically get better. So I was pretty aggressive on Chad Green, and I think he's pitched really well. The Jays may not give him a ton of opportunities. And just because he's pitched well, previously doesn't necessarily mean he's going to pitch well continually. And they do have Pearson and Richards, so it may not be Green the rest of the year, but it could be. And because it could be, I would grab Chad Green. Absolutely.
Yeah, to this point, he's been great. So absolutely. We're in bullpens, so let's make the obligatory Colorado bullpen mention here, Gray. Nobody really cares who the closer is there unless you're like me in a couple of leagues and you just need a save, even if it destroys ERA and WHIP. But if you are in that situation, Gray, who do you want?
I guess Beaks. I don't know. They're awful. I would not. I've said this before. I would not go and mess with Rockies. Like I'm all about speculating for saves in every league. Even like, the deepest of leagues, you even look at Rockies closers, but it doesn't feel worth it. I don't know. But yeah, I guess Beaks would be my first choice.
Yep. The best Rockies closer seems to be the next guy up. And that's just a continual process. Yeah. So we'll just keep waiting for that to keep happening. Let's go ahead and move over to waivers, Greg. Give the people some names.
Okay, cool. So Jesus Sanchez looks like he's gotten hot. Miami outfielder. Only really bright spot in Miami right now. Jesus Sanchez, that is. Josh H. Smith, Rangers cornerman. He actually has eligibility in a bunch of places. He's been hot for about a month now. He's really looked good. And Josh Jung is due back. But they also, I feel like Ezekiel Duran could probably go to the bench and Josh H. Smith can continue to play. So I would grab him. Jackson Merrill has been hot for a while. I think we mentioned him last week. Dylan Moore has been really valuable for the last week or two, maybe 3. He has eligibility everywhere as well. Mariners guy, Jay Cronenworth, Yandy Diaz. Let's see, Will Brennan, outfielder, guards outfielder. He's been top 15 overall for on the player rater for the last week. Has been hot. Is available everywhere. Dansby Swanson finally started hitting well. He is probably available in shallower leagues. Maybe if someone gave up on him, I would go back and get him. Hunter Goodman, Rockies outfielder, first baseman. He's been hot. I don't think the Rockies are home this week, so that's a little bit iffy there. And then Luke Raley, outfielder, first baseman for the Mariners as well. He's been hot. He looks kind of like a guy who could potentially be valuable for the whole year versus just this week. And then we mentioned earlier, of course, Spencer Horowitz and Alec Burleson.
Yep, I like those names. Great. Let's go ahead and move on to some streaming options. Jordan Montgomery versus Minnesota. Miles Mikolas versus Cincinnati. Jose Quintana versus Houston. Man, this is just running off the old names right now. James Paxton at the White Sox and at San Francisco. Oh, the White Sox is happening as we're recording this on Monday. DJ Hers at San Diego. He had a nice start. Kyle Hendricks has a two-step at San Francisco, at Milwaukee. He looked a lot better in his first start back, but I'm just going to be honest. I don't really trust it. Trevor Rogers, Jake Irvin at Tampa Bay, Cole Irvin versus Cleveland and versus Texas, and Ryan Nelson versus Minnesota, also giving me kind of Kyle Hendricks vibes. Don't really trust it, but he's looked good in a couple of starts, so throwing him in here if you are desperate and need somebody, you could certainly look at those guys. All right, great. If anybody else has any specific questions, you can always come to us on Twitter. I'm at RazBeaton. You are the at Razzball account owner. You can leave comments on youtube.com/Razzball Fantasy, on Razzball.com. Like, subscribe wherever you're listening to us or watching us. Till next week, Gray. Good luck. Talk to you later, bud.
All right, Lates.